to do that. They can require companies, like airlines or public transport companies, to stop transporting people at all, or just people who are infected or who they think they are infected, which is unprecedented. So they could, for example, lock down a federal state, and then you couldn't leave it by train or bus, which is a bit stupid, because if this law comes into effect, I will never take a train again, because the police can just stop me and force me to stick something up my nose. I'll just take my car everywhere. I mean, then they can't stop me. It's just like, well, not until they change this law. It's weird, but this is an immunity passport, right? This is where it goes. It doesn't say in there, but you will not do this with papers. There will be a digital thing. There are already companies lining up to do these things. There will be an app, or like a little credit card, or it will be put on your health card you get from your insurer, and that they will check that. These transportation companies, like public transportation or like airlines, they have to log who's sitting where in the train or on the plane, and they have to give that to the police or the health authority or whoever asks. And of course, this applies to sick people. It applies to people where we think they're sick, or people where we think they might be infected or might have been in a place where they could be infected. And this is all the stuff they can't do right now. They can't force me to take a test. And usually you're allowed to travel wherever you want. I mean, we had restrictions about that, which I talked about on the show, but they weren't able to shut down. So if you have a private company like Flixbus and they're driving their buses, like kind of like a German Greyhound, if they're driving Greyhound buses back and forth, they can now force them to shut down, or to just say you can't transport anybody from outside of North Rhine-Westphalia or whatever. Which is frankly a bit mad, but that's the way it goes. And that's pretty much. Oh yeah. Another thing is this is great. This is great. So in Germany we have national health insurance, right? We have social insurance, which you're generally, if nothing else happens, you're insured in that. And then you can get private insurance. Then you basically go out of the public system and become a customer of a private health insurer. But with these or with the public insurance, if you get sick, you get pay, right? You get sick pay. You get sick leave pay, depending on what you get, maybe for months. And what they are now saying in this law is something they've insurers have said before, but now it's in a law. If you travel to a country that's on the RKI danger list, and you didn't have to travel there, which is worded pretty weirdly, then if you don't have like a immediate need to do this, whatever that means, and then you don't, and if you then get sick, then and you have to stay home, obviously, because you have to quarantine yourself, then you don't get sick pay. This is unprecedented. This has never happened in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany, of our social system, of our healthcare system. This has never happened. I would call this professional victim blaming. Right? You went somewhere where you were not supposed to, you got sick, and now it's on you. This is unbelievable. The German healthcare system, it's raison d'etre. It's reason for being there. Its whole idea is that you protect people and you help them when they get sick, no matter why they got sick, or, I mean, this is a system where you are insured no matter what, like, previous conditions you have, whatever. That doesn't matter. If you get sick and if you get cancer and if you can't work for a year, then the state pays your salary. That's the point of this system. This is the first time in history where if you went somewhere you were not supposed to go and you got sick, you're out. And what I don't understand currently, because I'm not an expert in this definitely applies to sick pay. Now, there is a thing in the system which accounts for a lot more money that our whole healthcare system spent, which is if you're insured in this system, and everybody is, generally, if something happens to you, right? I'm a writer. If I have an accident and they have to amputate both my hands and I can't work anymore for the rest of my life, I get it's basically retirement pay, right? I get paid, not as much as I would if I normally worked, but I get a significant amount of money from the state for the rest of the time I would have worked, and then for my retirement time, whatever I think as well, to compensate me because I can't work anymore. And my question is, if you get complications from getting COVID because you went somewhere and it wasn't absolutely necessary, and these are insurance companies, so they'll argue that pretty much nothing's necessary, and you get sick and you can't work anymore because of that, are you out of that as well? I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but I would assume so. The whole language and the whole intent of this law, I would assume so. One of the interesting things is how they justify all of this, right? When they justify the alcohol thing, and it's just like, yeah, that's how it is. It's everybody. It's based. I'll have to look through this so I can actually find what they're actually saying, because it's quite hilarious. Where's the? Oh, I think I put the explanation into its own. Yes, I put that into its own stack of papers, because there's a lot of paper. I basically printed out the internet. Okay, so basically they're saying, I'll try to translate this on the fly. So if you're drinking alcohol on certain public places and at certain times, this can contribute significantly. Or if you outlaw that, if you outlaw the drinking of alcohol in public places at certain times, it can significantly lower the risk of infections. Because you are because the restriction of contact between people that is connected to this lowers the infection risk. Also, we are basically solving the problem that there are different, there's different people who want to buy alcohol are at the places where alcohol is sold, and then they're engaging in groups. So this is not about supermarkets. This where you can buy alcohol in Germany. This is about so if you're from Australia, in Germany you can buy alcohol everywhere at any time. You just have to be old enough. You just have to be 16 in general. No, they're talking about something, where I'm from, we have this tradition. It's called a Trinkhalle. In other places, it's called a kiosk. I think in Berlin, they call it a Späti, but, we call it Trinkhalle. It's these little stores. I'm from the Ruhr area, the Ruhrgebiet, and this is one of our cultural heritage. It's like this little, it's basically just a window, right? It's a sales window, and it's a small store, and it's full of, like, sweets. And as a kid, you went there and you said, gemischte Tüte für eine Mark bitte, where you gave them 1 Deutsche Mark, and they gave you a bag of sweets, and they just, they'll just pick and choose and then put that in, and then I mean, that was my childhood. But also you can buy alcohol there. And then there's people drinking there. They're standing outside this little window and they're talking. It's like society. It's like our social gathering spaces. And of course, if you close restaurants, then you're still not closing these, and these are very dangerous. And they just say it lower. They factually state if you outlaw the sale of alcohol in certain places, especially at night, certain public places, you lower the infection risk. Hello, Bundestag. Wait.
Hello, Bundestag. This is the internet calling. Citation needed. I repeat, citation needed.
If you read this on Wikipedia, some Wikipedia editor would have put citation needed next to this. They're just stating this. There's no scientific evidence. Nothing I've seen. I mean, yes, it kind of makes sense. It's probably common sense, but that's not how you make laws. Because alcohol is evil, and then people get infected by them. I mean, who are these idiots? And these people are like, I can't decide if they're idiots or if they're evil. So I have this journalist friend, and she sent like this form letter to every member of parliament about stopping this law and why it's unconstitutional and why it's a problem that they restricting what the Bundesrat can say, and that they're basically seriously undermining the balance of power and the checks and balances in our political system. And the governing the Conservatives or the Labour Party generally ignored this. She got a reply from one person in Labour Party. And the only person that wrote her back, and this was like 3 days ago or whatever, that had a response that I would call respectful of our constitution, was one guy from the AfD, which is like I don't know, they're not really neo-Nazis, but they're like populist. They like UKIP, right? They're scum of the earth. And one of them actually replied like they would reply with some I indulge in a conspiracy theory once in a while. I usually know that it's a conspiracy theory, or it humors me. But I mean, that guy replied with some conspiracy theory bullshit. That was just like clear bullshit. But the other guy was like, that was the only one where you're like, yeah, we are concerned by this as well because of these and these and these reasons. And he was quoting like, this is a problem because of the Grundgesetz and Constitution and blah, blah, blah. And the reply from the Labour Party person. So in one part of her email, she said, well, this is, she said the usual bullshit that it's just, it's just for COVID, and it's very focused on that, and it will, we'll stop doing this as soon as COVID is over, which I obviously think is bullshit. But then she said, this is already something the federal states are doing right now. And she's right, mass contact, distancing, stuff like that. They're already doing that. So basically she implied, so this is basically legal. This is what they're already doing. And we're just putting it into a law, and there's no issue because, we're basically not changing anything. And I can't decide if she's too stupid to be a member of parliament and should be removed on the grounds of low IQ immediately, or if she's a cynical, lying, and I mean lying in the definition that she knows that she's not telling the truth, misleading, horrible woman. I nearly said something else. Horrible woman. Because, what they are doing is, so the federal states are currently doing measures that might be unconstitutional and that are not written in law. And they are now putting this in law. And you can't say that there's no difference there, because what you're doing is specifically putting it in law. And I mean, if you're in the parliament, you have to understand the legal implications of this. That there's a difference between saying, oh, it's an emergency, we're just doing this, even though it might be illegal, but it's not a law. So, let's do it for now. But, then there can be laws, and then we get basically forbidden from doing it again. Or putting it in law and making it legal. Right? I mean, yes, you're doing something. You're changing the laws of the land to make a thing where we didn't know if it was constitutional, basically legal, and okay, still don't know if it's constitutional. The Constitutional Court will have to decide about that. But, I mean, you can't tell your voters when they ask you about this, oh, basically we're doing nothing. We're not changing anything. I mean, you're misleading your voters. Either you're too dumb to understand the system we pay you, we elected you, and pay you. And the funny thing is, she's from Hanover too as well. This is like my old voting district. Oh no, I basically explained who it was, and I didn't want to do that. Anyway, well, fuck her. Either she's lying, and she knows that she's changed. She's misleading her voters, or she's too dumb to be a member of parliament. This fucking stuff, it drives. So that's my general problem with this. I don't know if they're just afraid and dumb, like the general public, and don't understand what they're doing, or if they know what they're doing and are just evil fucking neocon bastards. Oh my God, and as I said in the beginning, I mean, why am I depressed by this? Because I think tomorrow they're going to debate this and it's going to go through. I think the general feeling in the population is that this thing is so bad and so evil that basically we have to throw 6 will they, how many more holes do they have to drill? What the fuck are they doing? I mean, are we okay, and I think people generally are, with restricting these 6 basic rights that we have in this country, that are explicitly protected as basic rights, as civil liberties in the Constitution, and restricting them in a situation where we don't know how long it lasts, because we don't know if this virus is ever going to go away, right? We don't know if the vaccination is going to work, how well it's going to work. I'm not against vaccinations. I have to always say this, because people, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm married to a clinical biologist. No, I'm not. But there are just myths about vaccinations, like that we eradicated diseases, right? Which we haven't. The measles are not gone. We fought them and it helped a lot, but we don't know. We don't know if it's going to work. It's certainly not going to get the thing away, and it's not going to eradicate the virus. And then the problem is, so they're saying okay, this is all all these restrictions there, where they say, well, this is only for SARS-CoV-2, right? No, because when this thing came up, they didn't change the Infektionsschutzgesetz. Or they just changed it and they just said, the first thing they did in the beginning is, obviously SARS-CoV-2 wasn't in there. SARS-1 and MERS was in there, and Ebola and other stuff was in there. No, they just changed the law, basically without any judicial review at all, and just pushed that through Parliament, which wasn't really in session because everybody was in lockdown. And they just put SARS-CoV-2 in there. And I mean, yes, this article specifically says it's SARS-CoV-2 specific, but if in 2 years SARS-CoV-3 comes up, what prevents them from just putting that in? As I always say, these laws will not get rolled back. The government barely rolls back any laws, and certainly not laws that enable it to control the populace. Think about it. Tell me one example of a government anywhere in the world that rolled back laws that enabled it to control, to restrict people. So in Twitch chat, obviously I'm streaming this live. Centurio Aperto says, "I'm willing to give up my rights until this is over." 999. Yeah, as Centurio Aperto points out, in the US we still have the Patriot Act. When 9/11 happened, and they created all these stupid security rules at airports. I mean, we're not talking laws here, but this is the same thing. All these stupid security rules because everybody was afraid. Rules that specialists in security all agreed don't work. It's security theater. It does nothing. They said, this is only until this goes away. Right. 20 years later, it's still there. It's not going to go away. People just got used to it. They complained for about 2 months or maybe a year. And then everybody was, of course I take my shoes off. And then, the kids that grow up, they just grow up with that. They'll just grow up with masks. They will never know a time when you could be in school and not wear a mask. And they're not getting sick. It's unbelievable. They will never... Centurio Aperto says, I think the last time the US threw out laws was in 1776. Yeah, it's pretty clear. I mean, it never happens. I study politics. I mean, you don't have to study politics to understand this, but it helps. You certainly learn that. It doesn't happen. There's no incentive in government to do that. You never give back power. And that doesn't matter if you're an autocratic regime or like an elected government official. You never do that. But I've talked enough about this. I talked about this law and why I think it's really bad and why I think it'll pass and why I think we'll never get rid of it. I'll do my best to inform people about it. I think we'll talk about this for a long time to come because the central data collection at the Robert Koch Institute will be huge. It will be done by the state and it will have bugs. People will break into the servers. People will get data from people. This will never... this will be a topic as long as the show exists, I would think. So that's the other thing. I've completely given up on having an inkling that, COVID-related topics will at one point stop. Because, we're putting all this stuff in, like the security apparatus, this data, this tracking, the big privacy reset. That's all connected to this, and that'll just be our future from now on. But at least I will never run out of topics for this show. Not that I would thought that would ever. I mean, any podcast I ever did, it's not I ever ran out of topics. But yeah, let's talk about something else. Why I was talking about this whole thing. I suddenly realized that I hadn't talked about the election at the beginning of the show, and I kind of wanted to do that. Centurio Aperto said that was our 1776. That was our glorious revolution from Great Britain. I'm guessing you're a listener from the US, so hello to the US. So let's talk a bit about the US. We talked about the election, and obviously Joe Biden is now pretty much elected. And I've already talked to Mike. We are planning to do the episode we threatened to do. Basically a recap after the election, see what happens. And I wanted to ask you, the listeners, I realize it's a long episode. A lot of people haven't listened to it or haven't listened to all of it. I've gotten some of that feedback. I don't think it's not like a lot of people haven't listened to it. I think most people haven't listened to all of it. And I said, I paused this and I started listening to the next one, whatever. But if you get through it, or even if if you stopped at some point, if you have some suggestions or generally just ideas, feedback on the presidential election, how it went, where you think there were issues, we talked about vote manipulation and related issues, and maybe privacy issues, then I would like to hear from you, because that would be something that we could also discuss in that episode that's coming up. But generally, I just wanted to comment on, obviously, Trump's gone, and we have Biden now. And I feel like these will be interesting times. I've already read some basically appraisals of Biden's political career, which is long. But there's obviously the crime bill. Then Kamala Harris is Kamala. I saw this video where she says how to pronounce the name, and then I forgot. I think it's Kamala. But obviously she is very proud of being a prosecutor president, so that's gonna be interesting. And I personally, my take is just this is the neocons coming back. We'll get all the Clinton, Bush, Obama neocons coming back in. And I feel like this is going to have privacy implications, actually pretty big ones, because I feel like Biden... you can already basically tell by... When he won, he was congratulated by all the big wigs in Silicon Valley. All the big tech companies are happy that Biden is president. And, Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle. We're talking the biggest offenders here when it comes to digital privacy violations. And one thing that Trump did, I didn't think he did it enough, obviously, but he did go after some, or his administration went after Silicon Valley companies, mostly because of him tweeting stuff, and then people they're putting notices on the tweet. So I think he picked a fight with Silicon Valley because of that, because Silicon Valley was always hostile to him. Just as he picked a fight with the press, which in the end might have turned out to work against him. But I think that's a big reason why he lost the election. But that's neither here nor there. So I think the fact that Silicon Valley is happy that Biden is elected will spell problems. I think Biden will be hands off the big tech companies. I think we will see further intrusions into privacy. I don't think we'll see the federal privacy law that I've talked about previously. So that'll be interesting. That'll be a direct impact on things that we talk about in this show, and I'll definitely keep an eye on once the Biden administration gets going, what will happen there. Yeah, I just wanted to address that quickly because it's just a thing I wanted to talk about. And then, speaking of feedback, let's get into the feedback and let's see what people have said about that political episode and other previous episodes. So first off, we have Martin, or as he puts it, not the patron, but the non-paying douchebag who also writes some spam from time to time. I don't want. This is a no agenda thing where people who are not contributing financially to the show are called or are themselves often calling themselves douchebags. I don't want to start with that here. I don't think you're a douchebag. I think it's my decision to provide this podcast to you for free. I would not have to do that. And I do that, and I don't feel forced into it. I think it's the right decision. And I begrudge nobody who just listens to the podcast. I think you're all producers. Everybody who interacts with this show is a producer. And it doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter if you supporting me monthly. It doesn't matter if you once sent me some money via PayPal. It doesn't matter if you don't do that. And if you just write feedback. This feedback is valuable. And the stuff that Martin provided me here is also valuable. And that's why I don't think you're a douchebag. Anyway, Martin wants to separate himself from the Martin I will later credit. It's not the same Martin. For having financially supported the show. Anyway, Martin, it's a common name, says, and this is about the election episode. You said that you used to not understand why there's an electoral college, but you do so now. You explained why you think the system is needed. I have 3 remarks. You said that you don't understand why suddenly in 2016 people discussed the popular vote. There are 2 reasons. 2016 after 2000 is one of only 5 cases where the popular vote didn't decide over the president. The other such cases were in the 19th century. I sadly don't find that quote, but I remember hearing Trump say that he finds the popular vote the better tool before the election, of course. Well, yes. Of politicians. You know, if they win, then they have no issue with that. They also persecuted General Flynn when, in the transition period when Trump was president-elect for talking to Russia. And Joe Biden's people are now talking to Russia. So, that's just politics. You also said that you think the Democrats would also accept an electoral win even if it wasn't backed by the popular vote. I would like to add, there's no data on that. The Democrats never won a presidential election without winning the popular vote. The Republicans did so 4 times. George W. Bush and Donald J. Trump being the most recent cases. Yeah, I agree with you. There's no data on that. I'm still under no illusion whatsoever that the Democrats would accept such a win. And you shouldn't be either. I mean, come on. I mean, if you are an observer of politics at all, that should be obvious. And yes, of course, it's only the Republicans who win with the Electoral College. That is what I explained, why the Electoral College, I think, is very important. Because the Democrats just traditionally control California and New York and maybe, some more New England states, whatever. But that's you need those 2 states, basically. And then you have the layout of the US that's always been kind of the same. And then you win if it goes by the popular vote because you control the most populous states. And that's why I think if I was living in the US, I would find the Electoral College a good idea. Because if you're living in Montana, you want a system that is also a federal system. The US is a federal system. It's not like the German federal system, but it is, it's a very federalist system that spreads power around and tries to not concentrate it too much in the hands of the federal government. Then I would find the Electoral College absolutely essential. Because if you go by population alone, then you might as well not vote if you're in Montana. It doesn't matter at all. Centuria, I mean, this is, let's a little bit. There's a problem with I will do an episode at one point, which will be a primer, like the socialism episode on what democracy means. So Centuria Aperta says, we in the US have a representative democracy, not a pure democracy. The pure democracy is 2 wolves and a sheep discussing what's for dinner. There's no such thing as a pure democracy. In Germany, we also have a representative democracy. We have a more direct electoral system, yes. But, there are many ways to structure a democracy, and one is not more correct than the other. There is a good reason that the US system is as it is, because it's a huge country. And it's a very, very, very diverse country. I mean, Germany basically fits into Texas, I think. So all federal states are tiny. We have a lot of inhabitants for such a small country, but we're a small country, and we're not stretched across a whole continent like the US is. So I think there's good reasons for the system, and I think the reasons. So, if you live in a democracy and you live under a constitution, and you purport to respect that constitution, as the Democrats in the US do, then if you want a change like that, a fundamental change, you have to explain. You have to have very good reasons for that, and I don't see any good reasons. The only reasons that the Democrats brought forth why the Electoral College should be abolished were basically, boo-hoo, Trump! And, that argument is gone because Trump's gone. You won that last election. So, what's the issue? So, but Martin continues. Sorry that I have to nag about that. No, it's totally okay. But you said you now understand why the Electoral College is needed, and I don't understand it. You said that it is needed in order to avoid crowded states to decide for the densely populated states. No, I mean actually the densely populated states deciding over the hand of all the other states. Because basically all of the US lives in California, New York, and Texas. And if California and New York are blue and Texas is red, Texas is one state, the other two are two states, and they have more people, they're going to win. So it's going to be a Democrat government all the time, which is why they want to get rid of the Electoral College. And that's not healthy in a democracy. It's not healthy to have the same party in power all the time. And it's a bigger problem if you're the US and you only have two parties, basically. So far, I see two features of the Electoral College. The number of electors mismatched the number of actual votes of the state, and in some cases also the number of possible votes in the state. That means that not every ballot paper has the same weight. The winner-takes-it-all rule means that ballot papers for a non-winner of a state have no weight at all. Which of these two features is the one you find relevant, or are there other features and effects that are relevant? I mean, the winner-takes-it-all thing is discussable. I talked with Mike about that in an earlier episode. We talked a little bit about that, I think, in our first episode, where we generally talked about journalism. But there's a discussion to be had about winner takes it all, and we don't have that in Germany, and if that's good. No, the reason is you're saying the Electoral College means that the votes in different states don't have the same weight. Right? So you're basically, I think, saying that because a state like Pennsylvania has more votes than, let's say, Montana, they have more weight. And I'm saying the exactly opposite. I'm saying it means that all the votes have weight. I don't know if we'll call it the same weight, but yeah, basically yes. Your vote counts no matter what state you live in. If it was popular vote, then you would never have to vote if you live in Montana or Alaska or, I don't know, Hawaii probably, because the vote would be decided in California. Well, it wouldn't be decided. I mean, California has been blue how long? It would always be the same result. Texas would always be red. New York, big parts of New England would always be blue. California would always be blue. And the other states wouldn't matter. The fact that you have swing states and you have changing every election, I mean, that's what changes. Yes, it's not ideal, because democracy is never ideal. It's not ideal that these swing states decide everything, right? So you might think that in Texas, your vote doesn't count because Texas is always red. So if you're a Democrat, you might think your vote doesn't count, but that's not true, because you have swing states, and Texas could presumably at one point become a swing state, just as California could theoretically at some point become a swing state. But the fact that you have these swing states actually means that there is movement in the system, and the last election proved it, right? Trump won in 2016, and now he lost. And yes, if you're a Democrat, you can say, see, we won by the popular vote again. That's why Biden won. But actually, if you look at those vote tallies, even like in the popular vote, I mean, this whole election was incredibly close when you talk about, the way it works with the Electoral College. If you talk about popular vote, it was still pretty close for such a big country. I mean, we haven't even counted all votes yet, so we don't know really how close, but Centurial Petrus points out, don't give Florida and Pennsylvania short shrift yet. Obviously, Mike and me talked about that being traditionally being swing states, although I don't think Florida was a swing state in this election. I think the Democrats deluded, and the media deluded itself into thinking it was, because it traditionally was. I think there was no chance in hell they were gonna vote against Trump. Trump having a big connection to Florida, Mar-a-Lago, everything. I know because of the UFC, and when Dana White, head of the UFC, wanted to have fights again. It was basically Florida let them have fights, and it was basically, as far as I can understand, he's buddies with Trump, and it was basically influence from Trump, who has a lot of local influence. I mean, on that first fight night they had in Florida, there was a video from Trump in front of the White House. Basically, they played that in, and it was basically Trump congratulating the UFC for being back. As Mike would call it, quid pro quo. So I don't think Florida was a swing state this time, but yes, you're generally all right. I think the system works. I think it's unhealthy in a democracy to go change too much. I mean, yes, I'm a conservative, but I am of the opinion that to change something, especially something constitutional, something as important as this, or as important as this, our constitutional rights in Germany that they want to change with this law, if you want to change something like this, then you need a damn good reason. A really good reason. And we think this system does not exhibit the will of the people is not a good reason. That's a prelude to reason, and then you need a reason. Right? So I would say, Nancy, come up with a better fucking reason. Because it sounds like you're just complaining that you lost the last time. Captain Egghead, who is also in the US, I think. I don't know. I have a feeling. But I don't remember why I have that feeling. Anyway, he comments on... I think he's a he. I mean, he's an egg. In his avatar, he's an egg, so... I think that's Schrödinger's egg, right? You don't know. With an egg, you don't know what kind of a little chicklet will hatch. Let's call him him. I'm just going to presume, because I'm part of the patriarchy. Captain Egghead says, you're completely right about having to prevent your computer from leaking stuff. So this is episode 46, last episode. He had some ideas on some OTG stuff, which I found interesting. And he says... you're completely right about having to prevent your computer from leaking stuff when using Tor. In fact, I'd use Docker for that experiment, X11 Docker plus Tor browser image. Not the safest of sandboxes, but pretty easy for me, since Docker is something I use regularly for my day job. Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, you're saying not the safest of sandboxes, but you just want to prevent data leaks, right? It's not so much a security thing. If you're trying to defend against somebody hacking into that, you have completely different problems. So I think that's a good setup. Actually, I hadn't thought about it. I'm not a Docker guy. People will realize, I still do a lot of Linux stuff, but none of my servers run Docker. I'm not a fan of Docker generally. I think it's great if you do if you're in a company and you do all this stuff and you have all these built environments and all this shit, then Docker is really a solution that is amazing. But it's also enthusiasts say, you have to use Docker. I have this friend who works at Red Hat. He's like, why are you not using Docker on this? And I'm like, because this server literally only runs SSH and an FTP server. Or it's not even FTP. It's like a web server that just serves files. It has two programs on, end screen. Actually, Tmux. But it has 3 programs on it. I don't need to use... Why would I use Docker for... app's fine. Anyway. But generally, yeah. Docker, great idea for this. It's actually... I like that. It's actually cool. And then he says the Purism Librem 5 is actually not Android-based. Rather, it's a pure Linux phone using regular screen size adjusted GNOME apps. Makes it even more interesting to me as a long-time Linux user. And I didn't know that either, but I had a look, and yes, it does. It's cool. It's Debian, I think. That makes it very interesting. I wonder. Traditionally, you wonder how good it works, because traditionally, there's a reason to use Android. Often because, your phone hardware and all these drivers. But, they have specifically their own phone. And I guess, they can just get the drivers to work with their kernel. And then I think a lot of that stuff, what can be upstream in the Linux kernel is already upstream. So sounds cool. Thanks for that email, Captain Egghead. And then I have our friend from Down Under who writes in periodically, and which I always enjoy, Barry Williams. Also in response to, he had written in, I had replied to his email in episode 46, and he replies to my reply, which was, we were talking about climate change. And he says, I think I agree entirely with your response to my email. Nuclear should be a part of the energy solution, and it pisses me off, quote, environmentalists, end quote, do not understand how the latest generation plants have very little environmental impact. It's people, right? They just get the idea that something's bad and then it's forever bad. As soon as I sent my email, I wanted to send a follow-up with caveat upon caveat. For example, yes, I understand. Well, not really, but I know there will be one. The economic impact, and that I get that if others are so I was talking about the big privacy reset. Now it's all part of one thing, the COVID thing, the big reset, that it's also going to be green policy. And he talks about the switch to green policy. Anyway, I understand the economic impact, and I get that if others continue as normal without being impacted, it is not good for the environment or the respective economies. So I was saying, Germany changing its whole economy is kind of a joke when it comes to climate change, when the US, India, China, and Australia, or whoever, will just go on, or Russia as they will. Like, it won't make any difference, pretty much. I would like to think that we could transfer the economy of a polluting system into a greener one. For example, retrain coal-fired power plant workers to nuclear power plant workers, but I understand it's not that easy. Yeah, I think generally, I'm not against, as I said, I'm not against assuming climate change is man-made and coming up with solutions to that, but they need to be good solutions, and the German solution is idiotic. Like, what the German government does is basically the Merkel government. It's Merkel's fucking fault. It's basically virtue signaling, right? So in Germany, under the red-green coalition, we're talking 1994 to 98, in that time frame, Germany invested hugely into solar and wind power because the Greens were in the government. And I never thought that this was a bad idea. They didn't shut the coal plants down. They didn't have any stupid ideas. They were like, we need to get rid of this. They were like, we need that also, and it might be the future, so invest in that. And German companies were the leaders in solar power and in wind turbines. And when the Merkel government came into power, they removed these subsidies. There were huge state subsidies on this stuff where, it made it feasible for German companies to develop and build this shit. And then German farmers whoever put these power plants into their fields, right? And they removed the subsidies. So these companies all died. Like, there was a big solar company when I was living in Bonn, Solar World, that went tits up. The wind turbines, they were actually dismantled in many places because the subsidies, without the subsidies, they weren't generating enough power and money for it to make sense to put these. If you had, you need a big area to put one of those, right? There needs to be space around because in winter they throw off ice and all this kind of stuff, safety concerns, and like your real estate's worth something. So it didn't make any sense to keep these power plants, so they were dismantled, and the German companies building them just disappeared and developing them. So now the Dutch are actually selling them to us because they didn't stop and they kept innovating. And Merkel did, when Fukushima happened, she was like, before that we have nuclear power, and when Fukushima happened, she was like, Okay, virtue signaling, it shut down all nuclear power plants within a few years. And then they were, okay, now we need renewable energies again. And then, it's all these decisions that don't make any sense. If you go like, yes, climate change is a big issue, then the first thing you do is like, right, yes, we need renewable energy. But we need, so we need wind and solar, but also nuclear. Like if CO2 is the main, if that's true, if that's the main factor, yeah, put nuclear power plants everywhere until we get all the other stuff working. Because, okay, one might blow up, and then we have plutonium around, then we have to evacuate an area, but at least we don't have any CO2, right? And yes, we have stuff and, waste that's going to be waste for the next 10 million years. But yeah, but at least there's no CO2, and that's not destroying the planet. And there's so many stupid other policies. Like in Germany, they're subsidized for years. They've been subsidizing these wood-fired pellet heating. Like the place I lived in Isernhagen was a new building with like a new, when they built these houses and there's like 20 flats in a development, stuff like that. And they were all fired by a central wood pellets stove, right? Because that was subsidized. Because it's renewable, because they make it from like these fast-growing trees and they grow back. Yeah, sure, it's renewable. It's also putting massive amounts of CO2 and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Yeah, but then you plant trees and they reabsorb it. Yeah, but then you chop the trees down and you burn them again. Like, also, the fact that you're planting trees and it's like the whole idea of carbon neutral is idiotic. You should be about, if CO2 is the problem and we're all dying, it's like COVID, right? If you're all dying, then you need to do everything you can to avoid putting CO2 in the atmosphere. This whole idea is where like, yeah, I keep continuing putting CO2 in the atmosphere, and then I'm planting some trees over there, and then I'm supposedly carbon neutral, or I bury some of the carbon. This is idiotic. All this stuff is idiotic. It's virtue signaling bullshit. It's like people buying a huge SUV that is an electronic vehicle. The point is not that it's an electronic vehicle, and if you're in the right place, it could theoretically be powered by green energy. The car is too big. It is too heavy. It uses too much energy to move itself. It has about as much space in there as a Twingo, except it's like 10 times as big and 5 times as heavy. And there's no reason for it. You can't even go off-road. It doesn't have any... It's not big inside. You can't even transport stuff. Right? I have a big car. I have a T4, which is a camper van with lots of shit in there. And still, it's huge. Like, if you want to go to IKEA, yes, you can put things in there that are 2.50 meters long because it's a van. People like that drive me insane. Anyway, let's stop talking about that because that is explicitly off topic. But I will not apologize for that because sometimes that happens, and that's what podcasting is, and that's why podcasting is so great. So that's the feedback. If you have any feedback, please let me know. PrivateCitizen.press, where all the show notes are, where the information is. Also, contact information is the contact link in the feedback section and in the footer. And I quickly talked about, before I talked about douchebags and who are not douchebags. You're all producers if you contribute. If you're right now, while I'm streaming this on Twitch, if you're in Twitch chat, you're a producer. If you write me emails or other messages, you're a producer. And you're also a producer this is the value for value model. If you see value in this and you give me monetary value, it helps me going. Right now I get about $120 I think, a month for this show, which is certainly, if you think about how much time, even if, this is live to tape and really streamlined, but if you think about the time I'm spending to produce this, that is measly. It's a measly hourly rate for the month. But, it's something, and it helps me justify doing this. When I do my accounting, I'm like, yeah, this is money coming in, and that helps. So, you can also do that if you want to keep it. That helps keep the show on the air. And you can go to PrivateCitizen.press, and there's information there how to do that. You can become a patron on Patreon. There's a link there. You can send one-off contributions via PayPal, via producers@fabindustries. Producers@fab.industries is the email address. Yeah, that's how it works. Toss a coin to your podcaster. I need to get my ukulele out again and try to learn that song and then change the lyrics and then annoy you until you pay. No. But I have to thank everybody. I mean, I'm crediting the people that provided feedback in the feedback section. Now I need to credit Raul Cabezali, who wrote and recorded the theme tune called Acoustic Roots. Well, it wasn't the theme tune. It was just a song he provided for licensing, which I licensed. And now it's the theme tune. And I hope it's become integral. It's certainly, to me, it's become integral to the show. And when I listen to it, I know I'm starting the show, and I hope you like it too. And I have to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk, which are a UK hosting company, and they're providing me with 2 lovely servers that don't run Docker, because they basically don't do anything except sending you the audio files if you request them. And they don't track you, they just record your IP for 30 days, and that's it. And yeah, that works, and that's why I love Bytemark. And they're the closest thing I will ever have to a corporate sponsor. They're just, also making the show happen, enabling me to do this. And otherwise, this would be a loss leader, and not so much of a leader either. I don't know. Probably would be a loss leader, but it's very much appreciated. Keeps the show going. Speaking of keeping the show going, the lovely people who kept the show going for this episode by providing some value in monetary form are the lovely Niall Donegan, Michael Mullen Jensen, Jonathan M. Heavy, Dave Butterbeans, Georges Walther, Steve Hose, Mark Holland, Shelby Groover, Vlad, Jackie Plage, One Eye 11G, Kai Sears, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Fadi Mansour, IKN, Matt Jalliman, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, David Potter, Mika, Dave Amrish, Martin, that's not the Martin that wrote in, SJ, Ricky M, Drive Zero, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, that's the Barry Williams who wrote in, Mr. Amish, Whiteutus Sadauskas, Neil, Captain Eckert, and I have to mention, and I have to apologize, I have to mention Galtaran. Galtaran is a subscriber to my Twitch channel, which it's incredibly hard to get Twitch to, like, they don't notify you, like, as far as I can tell, by email or something that somebody subscribed. So Galtaran has been subscribed for a while, and I mean, that's helping. That's that's sending a few bucks my way, and I hadn't been notified, and it's really hard to get a list of subscribers from Twitch. I have to use a third-party service for that, which is idiotic. Centuria Alberta says, I guess I can say that because he just said that publicly in Twitch chat. Just so you know, I'm Steve Hose. Thank you, Steve. Steven, actually. Yes, cool. That also explains that you're from the US. I appreciate it very much. Thank you as well. And yeah, so Galtaran is a Twitch subscriber. I don't know how long he's been for a while. So I want to credit these people as well. Michael Mullen Jensen is also a Twitch subscriber, but he also is already on the list as one of the top patrons because, I don't know, he's just great. He keeps supporting what I do, and he's a great friend that way. And he's also on the show sometimes. No quid pro quo. Definitely not. That brings me to something. Actually, if you think, I like to do interviews from time to time, or maybe not so much interviews, have people on as guest hosts talking about stuff. If you think you know somebody who would be interested and has something interesting to say, please let me know. So obviously they will have to want to come on the show, and they will have to have a at least decent microphone, but I think I can work that out in advance. I can work with a lot of things. And then I would love to talk to them, if they have an interesting thing to talk about, something, I don't know. Maybe they do some off-the-grid related software or hardware, or I don't know, or they have a podcast or whatever. If you know somebody, I'm open for suggestions. I like to get, once in a while, I like to get other people on the show just to mix it up and have interesting people to talk to, because doing a 2-hour show by yourself every week, I mean, I like it, I love it, don't get me wrong, which is why I appreciate people supporting me, but sometimes that just adds nice variety, I think. And with that, I think that's it. Speaking of 2 hours, I'm just spilling beer here. I think that's it. That's it for this show. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments on this law I discussed, maybe if you're in Germany, or if there's any local laws like that or anything you wanna talk about, please let me know. Please send me an email or contact me in other ways. And until then, I'll try to bring you coverage of the new crypto wars as soon as possible, because that's a very important topic. I don't know when yet, but I'll try. I'll give my best. Until then, aim to misbehave. And remember, I'm always here to fight for your right to have something to hide. See you next episode. Goodbye. Okay, let's save that. Let's stop the recording. And yes, of course, Steve, you're right. I didn't see that. I should have said that on the show. Of course, everybody who has Amazon Prime can subscribe for free. I do that. I subscribe to Halifa, who is a good friend who I stream with sometimes, and that's where my Prime subscription goes. Let me just see while we are talking about this. Anyway, before I do that, let me just see if maybe if you're in Germany, or if there's any local laws like that. Yeah, sounds like it recorded fine. So as you can see, I was a bit late today, and I'm just talking about some stuff, some next streams. If you're interested in watching more streams, I do other stuff as well. I'm on Friday. I actually want to do this on Tuesday. I'm going to try to do some voxel art live on stream for a while. And then on Saturday evening, I'm going to have Space Saturday, where I'm just going to play some Elite as long as I can manage that night. The wife isn't in town, so I'll be able to stay up as long as I can. And then, but not too much, too long, because on Sunday morning, 12 o'clock, that's morning for me on a Sunday, I'm going to build this lovely little Kobe model live on stream. Hang out, drink some coffee. So if you're interested in that, you can do that. Of course, as always, these streams are archived over on my YouTube channel. So if you search for Foxtrot Alpha Bravo, one word, Alpha with an F, on YouTube, or you can just go to this lovely website here, fab.industries/stream. It has a link to the YouTube channel there as well. You can find those in case you can't watch live. And that's it for me for tonight. I will now repair myself. Repair to my. No, I'm gonna stay here. That was a dumb way of saying things. I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna edit the show. Do the show notes, which I haven't. It's all on paper so far, and put this podcast out. And then I think I'm gonna collapse into bed because I have a lot of shit to do tomorrow, and at some point I'll have to install that punching bag. It's actually kickboxing back. Let's annoy the neighbors. I have a really good drill, power drill. That'll be fun. There'll be some 10 millimeter holes at least. I'm gonna put in the ceiling. Yeah. Thanks for watching the stream. I appreciate it very much. I hope you liked me ranting about German laws. And see you next time, I guess. Thanks for watching. Oh no! Let's see if I can raid somebody. I'm an idiot. I forget these things. It's not good. I wanted to raid somebody. How do I figure out who I can raid? Let's see. Must be. Let's go to Twitch. Okay, let's see. Maybe somebody's streaming something. Some of my friends. Anybody? Ah, look, Halifa. Halifa is streaming Assassin's Creed 5.
Yeah?
Oh. Yeah, that's Halifa. There she
Can
is.
we see more?
So let's raid her. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. I did this once. I think I need to. Am I not on her? Oh wait, no. I can do that in my things. Raid channel. Pick a channel. Halifa. So she's great. So if you want to watch some Assassin's Creed, hang in there. I'm gonna do this now. And see ya.